Building wealth is one of the key reasons why people purchase property, especially when you can spend the same amount of money or sometimes even less as renting and get all the same benefits and even more. Why pay someone else's mortgage and contribute to their equity? However, if you live in a high-priced region, it's going to be really difficult to purchase a home, and your monthly mortgage payment will constantly be draining money out of your bank account, and you want to do everything you can to avoid being house poor. So if you live in an expensive city, maybe it's time to move to greener, less expensive pastures. After all, something that's less expensive doesn't always mean that it's worse. In order to determine the top 10 most affordable locations for home buyers, Forbes magazine examined 100 metro regions with a population of at least 100,000. Also, to determine affordability, we'll take into account a number of different variables, including the city's median income, typical housing prices, and the typical real estate taxes. And keep in mind, all of these cities have a population of over 100,000 people, and a lot of them truly do have good economic upside in the near future. So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at number 10. In the 10th spot, we have Kansas City, Kansas. Some of the most affordable areas for first-time homeowners are in the Midwest, and Kansas City is a great example of that. This could be an excellent area for buyers on a budget. The median housing price is well below $200,000, and it's even better if you currently work in the medical industry, because the largest industry in Kansas City is the medical industry. More than 10,000 people work together at the University of Kansas Medical Center and the University of Kansas Hospital. The average salary in Kansas City, Kansas is around $37,000, with the average home costing around $170,000. So definitely not a bad option if you already work in the medical field or you're looking to get a remote job. Now let's move right on to number 9, Buffalo, New York. Over the last 10 years, Buffalo has undergone some significant changes, with lots of new restaurants, entertainments, activities, and things like that opening up every year. All of this has given Buffalo a lot of excitement, because typically they're just known for their harsh winters. Buffalo, which is the largest city in upstate New York, is located around 7 hours northwest of Manhattan. Buffalo really is an affordable option, especially if you don't want to live in a gigantic city like New York City. The population here is just under 300,000, and the average home is going to cost you about $185,000. And although the houses are a little more expensive in Buffalo than they are in Kansas City, people make a little more in Buffalo, with the average salary being around $41,000, which is quite a bit higher than Kansas City's. So that's the main reason it's ranked at number 9. Let's move on to number 8, Montgomery, Alabama. Alabama's median annual real estate taxes, which come out to around $512, are the lowest in the nation. Montgomery not only has excellent tax rate, but is also full of strong job prospects. Montgomery, Alabama may fly under the radar, but it's actually a decent place to live and really affordable. And they have tons of jobs in the aerospace industry. More and more aerospace jobs become available in this area every year. And they also have a significant amount of auto jobs as well. This area really is ready for expansion. A young family can make a living here, purchase a pretty affordable property, and save a good amount of money. The average house in Montgomery, Alabama is going to cost around $192,000. But like I said earlier, it really does have low property taxes, and it also has low income tax as well. So it definitely deserves a spot on this list. Now that we spent a little time down south in Alabama, let's head back up north with number 7, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, which is situated on the western shore of Lake Michigan, is most well known for its production of beer. In fact, Milwaukee had breweries even before it was officially a city. Milwaukee is home to some of the oldest American breweries, such as Miller and Pabst. And even the city's baseball team is called the Brewers to honor the city's heritage. Although there are more than 30 breweries in the Milwaukee area, the city's economy is still dominated by healthcare. In fact, the top 3 job providers in Milwaukee are all healthcare providers. And recently, Milwaukee has actually been a popular destination for people leaving more costly metro areas such as Chicago. The average cost per house in Milwaukee is only $167,000, and Chicago's is just over $370,000. And Milwaukee is only just about 100 miles from Chicago. So if you live in the Chicago area and you're looking for somewhere cheaper, Milwaukee might be a decent alternative. Let's take a look at number 6. For number 6, we're going back to New York, because Rochester, New York made this list as well. But Rochester may soon lose some of its affordability. Rochester was among the metro cities with a population of at least 1 million that witnessed the largest returns on investment in the year 2020. That is for house sellers. In fact, just in the past couple years, the housing prices have risen 49%. Many housing specialists have been keeping an eye on its individuals that leave Manhattan in search of more affordable housing. If you live in Rochester, you may notice a lot of New York spillover. And that's because people from all across the country move to New York for good jobs. But a lot of them just 10 or 15 years later find themselves moving to Rochester simply because they cannot keep up with the cost of living in New York City. The average house here only costs around $150,000, so that's a lot cheaper than the New York City area. And there are some decent jobs in Rochester. The main employer in the city is the University of Rochester and its medical complex, which employs around 32,000 people. And for the next one on our list, we're staying on the East Coast because number 5 is Baltimore, Maryland. High-profile companies with headquarters in Baltimore include Johns Hopkins University and Northrop Grumman. The federal, state, and local governments each employ more than 18% of Baltimore's workforce. Also, if you're looking to get a job near Washington, D.C., Baltimore might be a great option because it's just under an hour away from Washington, D.C. People in Baltimore can commute to the far more expensive Washington, D.C. for employment in just about 8 train stops or so. One guy on Reddit said that he's been doing this for 8 years and has saved so much money living in Baltimore instead of DC. Maybe you should think about renting a place in Baltimore to see if you can handle the environment there before buying a house. But it might be a decent option. Alright, let's move on to number 4. At number 4, we have Memphis, Tennessee. The average house price in Memphis, Tennessee is only $123,000. And while in the past, Memphis, Tennessee has struggled financially, from 2018 to 2019, they actually increased their income by 9.88%. But Memphis does have some of the worst crime rates in the nation. So if you're planning on moving there to get a cheap house, just make sure you find a decent area. But Memphis also does have a rich history in music, which rivals any city. When you think of Memphis music, you probably think of the blues, rock and roll, and Elvis Presley. Memphis has been referred to as the cradle of American music, and it makes sense why. Now let's take a look at number 3 on the list, Toledo, Ohio. Although there might not be a ton of things to do in Toledo, it's close to some major cities. It's 2 hours from Cleveland and just about 4 hours to Chicago. Although Toledo has experienced some economic hardship since the 1980s, the Rust Belt city has recently made progress toward a brighter future. Toledo has seen an increase in construction employment by 6.4%, as well as an increase in the financial sector, about 2%. Oh, and yeah, the reason why it's this high in the list, the houses are really cheap here, with the average home price being only $95,000. So while it may not be the most exciting city or the most financially stable city, it definitely is a decent option if you're looking for a really cheap house. For number 2 on our list, we have another Ohio city, and that's Cleveland, Ohio. The houses here are quite a bit more expensive than Toledo at $140,000, but they make a lot more money here. In Cleveland, the average income is $47,000, while in Toledo, it's only $37,000. And Cleveland is not only a cheap city, but it's also a relatively young city. Its median age is just under 36, which is a little below the national average. And Cleveland is a little unique. People who live here enjoy boat parties and a lot of water sports on Lake Erie. And for those who enjoy the outdoors, there's a vast amount of nature preserves that encircle the city. More than 300 miles of hiking, biking, and horseback riding paths, as well as a lot of picnic spots, golf courses, fishing holes, and much more. However, it's not just all fun and games because Cleveland's economy is also strong and expanding. And the Cleveland metro area's unemployment is a little lower than the national average. And they've had a decent amount of tech jobs come to Cleveland. Similar to Memphis, Tennessee, there are some high crime rates here though. Not as high as Memphis though, but just be careful if you're planning on buying a house here. On to number 1, the city with the cheapest housing in America. You may have guessed it, but it's Detroit, Michigan. The average home here only costs $59,000, and the average salary is among the lowest in the nation as well. But despite the low salary, the median monthly mortgage payment for Detroit's residents will be just about 6% of their income, which is incredibly cheap. Detroit has endured some significant setbacks over the past years, of course including a massive collapse in the auto sector. But in recent years, it has gotten a little better. Detroit is the corporate headquarters for well-known businesses like General Motors, Ally Financial, and Quicken Loans. But there's a reason why the houses are so cheap here. Nobody really makes a lot of money and the crime is pretty bad. So if you're considering Detroit, you really have to believe that Detroit is on an upward trend, which a lot of people do believe, and it looks more promising now than it has in years past. Well, what do you think? Would you move or maybe buy a house in one of these cheap cities? Let me know in the comments below. Until next video, peace.